This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from all around the globe. Get a whole month free at Mubi.com/Karsten. Hello, this is what I watched in January. I started this month with Polytechnique, real light start to the year, I know. I watched this one to prepare for my Denis Villeneuve ranked video and was pretty disappointed by it. Not one of his strongest films, narratively speaking, never thought this really scratched the surface of what it wanted to do. That said, still a good example of how Denis Villeneuve can use a camera in an interesting way. Then I went on a bit of a Japanese marathon, starting with Dark Water. This is directed by Hideo Nakata, who also did Ringu, and this is just as unsettling as that one. Damn, does this man give me nightmares. Even his headshot is kind of crazy. Nakata knows how to deliver a terrifying image. He understands it's not just about the image itself, it's about how you reveal it. And he deals out scares pretty thoughtfully here. I found the way this explored generational trauma to be really unique and dense, especially for a horror film like this. Very scary stuff. Then I watched All About Lily Chou-Chou. This is one of those kinda Tumblr movies. Not a bad thing, just a movie that really hits for that kind of crowd. And newsflash, that shit gets me going 90% of the time. The cut of this film is unlike anything I have ever seen. The choice to use a black screen and white text to capture the online world was really interesting and could have been super tiresome, but instead gave the film a rhythm that I eventually just accepted and ended up loving. It being this black void that the viewer is forced into was just so brilliant to me. It was like I was experiencing this space in first person. This absolutely nailed the endless angst of being a teenager. I don't think any film has committed to that perspective as aggressively as this one, especially for one that's aiming to capture this specifically new generation of online youth. This breaks the form constantly, whilst never losing sight of its devastating emotional core. It's a very personal movie that has become a sort of anthem to some people for a reason. By that I mean probably the best film about modern fandom that I can think of. Just brilliant film all around. You're never going to see anything else like this. Definitely check it out. Then I watched Ornamental Hairpin. This is directed by Hiroshi Shimizu, who I'm surprised I haven't heard of until now. His compositions are breathtaking, his runtimes are short, but both stories of his that I watched this month, this one specifically, really moved me. This film does center around a literal hairpin, but the romance that comes about through it is so potent. The small world of this film is also so lived in. I honestly wish it was longer. Just one of those auteurs I wish I knew about earlier because I really love what he's doing. If you like Ozu, you'll definitely like this. And I watched Ichi the Killer. This is a Takashi Miike film I've always wanted to see and only just now got around to. And damn, it really is about as violent as I was hoping it would be. But I found what it had to say about pain and violence, specifically the need to feel pain as a means of feeling alive, to be really sad. For as shocking as these scenes are, the film's most surprising moment was, to me, its heartbreaking ending, which moved me far more than anything else I've seen from Miike. I don't think he's ever been this personal before. I still think he gets lost in his own sauce every now and then, something I feel about every one of his films, but for a film that feels like it belongs on those most fucked up movies lists, it proves itself to be so much more than that. It's getting to the bottom of its own twisted nature. Then I watched Bullet Ballet. This is directed by Shinya Tsukamoto, same lad who made Tetsuo the Iron Man, a film I deeply admired for its atmosphere and commitment to practical effects, but felt frustratingly empty by. Bullet Ballet, on the other hand, far more interesting film, to be honest. This is a movie about a man who does everything he can to get a gun after his fiancée shoots herself. It's very moody and all over the place with its emotions, all of which are dealt out with the same amount of intensity. It's a painful movie about a miserable man that puts you directly into his tunnel vision. It can be a disorienting watch, not unlike Tetsuo, but the amount of heart and desperation pouring out of this translates clear as day, and it makes it hard not to feel overwhelmed by what this is showing you. And I watched Boy. This is a Nagisa Oshima deep cut about a boy who is used by his parents to swindle money out of drivers. It's a very upsetting film about lost childhood and capitalism that works some magic in also being a weirdly enjoyable watch. It reminds me a lot of Sean Baker's work in that way. You kind of get swept up in the adrenaline and free-spirited lifestyle of the kid, and it's a lot of fun until it's not. The cinematography is at times breathtaking, really great use of widescreen. It feels very ahead of its time for this era of Japanese filmmaking, very rebellious, very angry. And as far as movies from the perspective of children go, this has to be one of the most devastating and realistic. Definitely check this one out. Then I watched Maelstrom. Also watched this one for the Denis video. Lots that I admire about what he's doing here. It's very silly at times, but also very earnest in its exploration of grief and guilt. But as ambitious as it is seeing him try to balance all these tones and ideas, they just don't all fall into place as cleanly as they should for this to fully work. Then I watched Afterlife. This is an essential Koreeda film that I completely lost myself in. God, I love this. Some films you can just live inside of them forever, this being one of them. Much of this is people talking at a table, reminiscing on their lives. There is a concrete plot here that makes itself more known in the back half, one with all the twisty drama you want to see in a Koreeda film. But where this flies is in these solo interview scenes. It feels like you're watching a documentary. The film, if you didn't know, is a bunch of people picking one memory to hold on to forever after they die. It's a quirky take on death that thoroughly examines the subject through a variety of age groups, and for a film about dying, it felt like a warm hug by the end. Reminded me why Koreeda really is one of our greats. Just when I think he keeps making the same movie, I realized no, there's still so much to discover in his filmography. Then I watched August 32nd on Earth. This is Denis' first feature film, obviously watched for the video, and yeah, very amateurish and probably would be better as a short, but there is still something I admire about this. There's something sort of charming about how much energy is bouncing off this film. Clearly a film made by a very hungry filmmaker. And I watched Sicario, another Denis movie, one I hadn't seen until this month, believe it or not, and I really loved it. This is the Denis I know today. Technically flawless, airtight script, bone-chilling performances. Went into this one completely blind, which made for a really thrilling experience. That ending, woof. Then I watched The Masseurs and a Woman. This is another Shimizu film that was honestly extremely similar to Ornamental Hairpin. Stylistically, it's just as light on its feet. The sense of community is just as strong. The compositions look just as nice. There are also blind masseurs. This, maybe more than Hairpin, focuses on the small joys in life, and in that way came across very poetic in a way that reminded me of Ozu and to an extent Jarmusch. Then I watched Incendies, my final film of Villeneuve's that I needed to see. This was quite the devastating note to end on. Incendies hit me like a truck when I was done with it. Sat in complete darkness for a good while, then went on a walk to clear my head. It's just one of those films, one of Villeneuve's most character-driven works, one of his most grounded, and in those ways you could say it's his most focused. Then I watched his Motorbike, Her Island. This is directed by Nobuhiko Obayashi, same director as Hausu, and you do in fact get the same playful approach as you did in that. This thing cuts back and forth between black and white and color, a choice initially explained as one being a memory and the other being real life, but the film goes off the rails in a way where nothing really feels like it's following any rules at a certain point, which made it feel just that much more alive in the filmmaking. It's a very freeing experience to watch this, and it makes the romance at the heart of it land pretty hard. Very lovely film, so much personality. Obayashi is such a gift of a filmmaker, we do not deserve him. Then I watched I'm Still Here. First and foremost, my takeaway after this was just how great Fernanda Torres was. She delivers without a doubt my favorite lead actress performance this year. Really captivating and, for the most part, gentle performance. Really glad it's being recognized. The film in general is very gentle with its storytelling. I didn't know shit about shit going into this, and the film puts you in the dark in a pretty haunting way. Made only that much more haunting by how real the family dynamic at the center of it is. One of my favorite aspects about this are the home video montages. The editing of those moments is just beautiful, and I love the look of the Super 8 cinematography. It's how this film uses memory and plays with feelings stuck in time that makes it a step above just a cut and dry thriller drama, something this film could have been. Really enjoyed this one. Still in shock that it's nominated for Best Picture, but I'm glad it is. Then I watched Street of Shame. This is directed by legendary Japanese filmmaker Kenji Mizoguchi and tells the story of 5 sex workers. Obviously ahead of its time, but for whatever reason I couldn't get into this one as much as I wanted to. I still admired it for its bleak and intimate exploration of the subject. It really brings things home in the end too. It's also a very interesting final film for someone to make, but compared to what else I've seen from Mizoguchi, this was almost too weird for me to ever fully come around or get into it. I admire the strange, whistly score, but man is it odd. Very strange film. Then I watched Asako I II, my final Japanese film this month. This is about a girl who meets a bad boy and falls in love only for him to leave her, and what happens when she meets an identical looking guy with a completely different personality many years later. A plot like that could leave this leaning a little too into melodrama, or worse, like a teen romance, but this dodges all those bullets. Instead, it's an achingly romantic film about those early romances, those toxic parts of us that will burn every other bridge if it means saving one terrible relationship. The decision making here is hard to watch, but man, is it real. I've seen some reviews say Asako is underwritten, something I also see written about films like The Worst Person in the World, for example, but I think those reviews aren't acknowledging that the fact that she's abandoning herself and her own needs for this guy is the point. It's a very real feeling that many people this age experience. Weirdly, it's one of my favorites from Hamaguchi. He really nailed it with this one. It's not as slow or as like poetic as Drive My Car or Evil Does Not Exist, but it's deeply honest and brought me back to some places I never wanted to go back to. Then I rewatched Blue Velvet in honor of David Lynch. This has always been in my head the accessible David Lynch movie, and maybe it is next to everything else, but damn, it's still pretty dark. Maybe its disturbing qualities were just that much stronger because of the mood of the day I watched this on. This bummed me out more than I expected it to. That said, the moments of light in this still fight their way through. The Laura Dern monologue is an all-timer, and man, do I love the ending. Then I rewatched Nickel Boys. Had to confirm this was the best movie of 2024, which it absolutely is. It hits so damn hard on a rewatch. I remember being overwhelmed by all the archival footage the first time, but knowing how things pan out, I was able to pay a bit more attention to how a certain piece of footage comes in, why that moment worked for that cut. This intentional cutting allows Ross to paint out a rich and complex portrait of America, both at this time, whilst also capturing where it's heading. As I've said before, this movie introduces a new way of seeing the world around you, and it's still showing me new things on a second watch. Timeless. Then I watched The Girl with the Needle. This is an Oscar-nominated film out of Denmark set in 1919 about a woman who discovers an underground adoption agency. I don't know why I kept expecting this to be some sort of watery, psychological European art house film with nothing to latch onto. Really stupid of me, because this is a gripping thriller with front-to-back gorgeous cinematography. Yes, the bleakness is aggressive, and it can be very hard to watch at times, but I think the film offers a lot of hope throughout that keeps it from ever feeling like a parody of a black and white European art house film. There's so much personality to the filmmaking too, it's anything but stale. Pretty amazed at how long I slept on this, always embarrassing when it takes an Oscar nom for me to finally check something out. Then I watched September 5. This, on the other hand, opposite side of the spectrum. No, September 5 isn't actually all that bad. Does it read like by the book's Oscar bait for most of its runtime? Sure, but I was pretty riveted by its editing, I have to admit. It's almost like Saturday Night if Saturday Night had some more purpose. The film's biggest flaw is that it knows how dicey its topic is at a time like this, centering around a group of Palestinian terrorists who hold a group of Israeli Olympians hostage. The film bounces around the topic to an impressive degree, refusing to ever dip its toe too far into saying anything about that ongoing conflict, instead focusing mostly on media's role in the event. The film, like its subjects, has an "I'm just the sports guy" attitude, and it gets away with quite a lot in doing that, because that's kind of what this is. Does it feel just a tad bit empty in that approach, though? Absolutely. Like, it could have said more than what it ended up saying, of course. But if you're looking for a quick thriller to pass the time, this will do the job. Then I rewatched Anora. Talked about this one so much by now. I have very little to add other than third time's a charm. I've decided I really enjoy this film despite its flaws. Sean Baker makes some of the most entertaining films of his time. And yeah, I'm done talking about this one. Then I watched The 688. Kind of want to save most of my thoughts on this one for my proper Oscar nominations video. This is obviously the only reason I watched this, but this was fine. It was an interesting story, but the direction does it no favors at all. Seeing this do one interesting camera trick was like watching a baby walk for the first time. Just not a film with any muscle behind it, and it really needed some muscle. Then I watched Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul. Yeah, it's great. Of course it's great. It's Wallace and Gromit. I love the Wallace and Gromit films. I grew up on them. And at a time where it feels like everything is worse, Wallace and Gromit has managed to stick to its roots and maintain what makes it special. The humor is still innocent and clever. The animation is still nice to look at. The stories are still small and charming. I wish we got one of these every year. The world would be an infinitely better place. Then I finished the month with Maria. This is the latest from Pablo Larraín. And damn, I'm starting to get a little sick of his bullshit. It's pretty much exactly what you expect it to be, which is a pretty big shame considering he was at one point a filmmaker known for taking the biopic and going somewhere strange and unexpected with it. Albeit, this is really the only time he missed with me, and it does still look beautiful as expected. Angelina Jolie is just fine, but it does feel like Pablo Larraín on autopilot mode, which is not a place you want to be. If you're suffering from insomnia, throw on Maria. It'll fix you right up. And hey, that's what I watched this month. I never do this, but I want to acknowledge that I am trying to see Better Man. Between the LA wildfires and getting deathly ill these last few weeks, I just haven't had the time or energy to get out there and see it. But obviously I want to. It's a singing monkey. Thanks for watching. Go watch these films and form your own opinions. And if you're looking for something to watch next month, you should check out this week's sponsor, Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming service, a place to watch beautiful, interesting, and incredible cinema. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there's always something new to discover. With Mubi, each and every film is hand-selected by its team of curators. Discover the best of cinema at your fingertips, streaming anytime, anywhere. If you're like me, and this next month you want to get into some of the Oscar films, some essential films before the Oscars, they got those. You can watch both The Substance as well as The Girl with the Needle on Mubi. As someone who just watched The Girl with the Needle this last month, you should really check it out. It's a beautiful and pretty insane movie. You can try Mubi free for 30 days at Mubi.com/Karsten. That's MUBI.com/Karsten for a whole month of amazing cinema for free.